So if you know me, you know that I'm a person of side quests. I'm constantly doing things. And right now, I have my one video every day for a year series. Then I have the Road to 10 million streams on Spotify inside of that series. And unfortunately, I'm not a machine. So I can't just churn things out every 3 seconds based on, what I'm thinking about or the goal at hand. I'm a human. I have other interests. And so I've taken on a side quest. And if you've read the title of the video, then you know that the side quest is to learn new languages. I always wanted to be a polyglot. That word is so crazy. Polyglot. And I wanted to learn more languages, but some part of my delulu brain at work was like, a few months back, what if I learned other languages so that when I go to those countries and I play like a show or whatever, I'm well versed in the speaking, right? Now, I'm not much of a traveler, to be quite honest. I like to travel for music, but I'm more of a homebody. But my girlfriend gets me out the house, so I already am gonna leave. So I might as well learn. And the side quest for this year is to learn more languages. So right now, I know English as I'm speaking to you, and I know Spanish. And so my Spanish is slipping a little bit. I learned Spanish years ago, and I've been kind of keeping up with it. But when you learn a language, I think that there's like what I would call different periods during that time period where you're learning a language. And some parts are harder to maintain than others because self-teaching a language versus having it in class can be a little bit harder because class has a certain structure, right? A certain kind of curriculum where you learn that language based on that curriculum, but it can also vary from teacher to teacher because some parts of speaking and learning can be very robotic and formal. And when you talk to people, you talk with slang, you talk in an informal way, you talk on like the context. So I'm going to go over the periods of things I have to learn before I learn languages and which ones I want to learn. So I know English, as you see. I know Spanish, but I'm in the maintenance period for Spanish, and I'll explain that in a second. And I want to learn Portuguese and I want to learn Japanese. Those are the two so far, but I'm probably going to try and learn more over time. I did pick up Mandarin for a little bit, but that fell. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Right now, I'm going to go over the periods. So there's different periods of learning. There's the first period, which I call like the intro period, where you're kind of learning like a 3, 4, 5-year-old learns language. You're learning words, bits and pieces, sounds, how to write a little bit, and it's your introductory period. Then you have the vocab period. That's where you start to learn more words. So you learn words in that kind of world or that language that you're learning, and you start to reference them to words that you know in English or in your native language. So for me, if I'm learning apple, Portuguese, that'd be masa. And in Spanish, that'd be manzana. And I would have to keep up with those as I learn more vocabulary and refer them back to my life in terms of food, family, structure, places, things like that. So you have your vocab period. Then you have your reading and writing, which you're learning as you do your vocab period. You have to learn how to read, you have to learn how to write. As you see those words, you can kind of start to understand where you're going with them. So you go from the intro period to the vocab period to reading and writing and starting to learn that. And then you get into the context period. And that's where you start to learn about the context of words in a sentence. So some words might not make sense in a sentence the way you would say them in a different language versus in your native language. So you start to learn the context of that. Next would be like grammar and all of that. You start to learn grammar at some point. This is how I learned, by the way, because grammar in like classes, after taking many classes in Spanish and some in Mandarin and Italian, like grammar comes really early. And I find that people have a hard time grasping the grammar because they don't grasp any of the language yet, right? So like you have to kind of have the context of grammar without any context on words or vocab or understanding. So I like to learn grammar later because the grammar and like speaking and all of that comes kind of later for me. So I have like a grammar period where I start to learn grammar and how to construct a sentence. And once you get to that point, then you hit formal, kind of the formal period where you write it like the formal way, the perfect way, the way that the sentence would be said if you were a robot. Now, you don't talk like that when you're out and about, but it helps you learn and grasp and understand how to speak that language. So you hit like the formal period where you sound kind of like this, but it's how you learn. I am from the United States. My name is Michaela. You know, that kind of thing. Or like, me llamo Michaela, estoy en Estados Unidos, right? So you have that, the very straightforward. Then you start to learn informal speaking. And that's when, I think I said estoy es Estados Unidos, but my brain is off. I've been working a lot, so don't mind me. Anyway, so then you have the informal period where you have more informal kind of speaking, where you can talk on a conversational kind of level. And that takes a while because it's hard to break out of the formal, especially when you don't have someone to speak with or to practice with. But that's the point where you start to watch videos, you start to listen to things, and you start to hear more conversational in that language, conversations in that language. So that's what I'm working on right now. Now, I know that had nothing to do with music, but I promise my side quest will get to my main quest, because the thing is, if I teach myself more things, I get to spend a little more time being creative in different ways and using my brain in different ways. And like learning like languages and stuff is something that I find really interesting. And it fuels my music passion even more, because I'm like, okay, if I learn this language, then I can go to that country. Easy. And play some shows. So it makes me feel like I'm really doing something, right? So on those times where I don't have time for music, or I, am not as creative, this and that. Sorry about that. Or in the times that I'm not as creative, I can actually like spend some time learning something and using my brain in a different way. And motivating myself to the main task, which is music, right? And being creative. So there's that. But right now, Spanish is in like the maintenance period, which was the last one I left out. And the maintenance period is basically keeping up with that language. If you don't speak in that language every day, if you're not reading it, if you're not writing it, you do lose it. At least for me, I lose it. So I have to have like a maintenance period with Spanish where I go on Duolingo, I watch videos, I use that kind of thing, just to keep myself kind of in the loop on it, listening to music, things like that, and making sure that I can keep that language going, because I don't use it as much. I used to use it more when I was a teacher, or like a chess teacher or whatever, because I would teach kids in chess. But after that, I was like, dang, well, I don't really use it as much anymore. So moving on from that. Right now with Portuguese, I'm in like the vocab period. I've learned a little bit of the intro, but I'm still learning a lot of the words, and it's weird because Portuguese and Spanish kind of sound alike sometimes, and sometimes they don't. So like some words I can like reference in Spanish and English, and then to Portuguese, and then some don't sound quite right. So like kind of mix them up a little bit. Even saying the sentence earlier, like I almost mixed up like Spanish and Portuguese. So that is a tough part of learning many languages, but it's something that we'll get better at over time. But that is my side quest for the next foreseeable future. And if you see me talking about languages out of nowhere, it's because, well, what I just told you, this whole video. So if you want to ask me any questions, if there's a language that I should learn, let me know. I'm so interested in learning more, and I might show like some progress over time, just like I do with the check-ins for my streams and like the Spotify updates. But yeah, pretty excited about it. It's gonna be pretty fun. I've been learning art, been learning languages in my lunchtime, like my free time, and I've been coming up with video ideas. And I don't have to do that as much because I have such a big book of them that it works out. Y'all see this? It's driving me crazy. I think it's a feather. Yeah, I got it. Cool. But yeah, that's all there is to it. And till then, I'll see you tomorrow.